So let's switch back to
Yes,
English. Is this
perfect.
okay?
Perfect. Yes.
So
Mhm.
perhaps I can try to introduce you somehow. Well, to be honest, I don't know nothing about you, so perhaps it's the best thing that you introduce yourself. Yeah, right.
Yes.
And today I'm here, Benjamin Stucky,
Yes. Stucky. Yeah.
Stucky. Yeah, and
Perfect.
Swiss German it's Stucky, Benjamin
Genau.
Stucky.
Genau.
Is meeting, is joining me today, and I hope we will have an interesting discussion, especially about sleeping, about the sleep sciences, because he is an expert, a researcher in a university in Zurich, in Switzerland. And as I understand it now, you will introduce yourself more in detail, and you are doing research on sleep, sleep research. And I find this absolutely fascinating because, well, I will add my weird metaphysical theories about sleep, but these are coming from someone who has no real understanding of the science of sleep. So just speculating, but this will come later. And yeah, Benjamin, let us see. Perhaps introduce yourself first, and then
Yes.
let's discuss about what your research and all the philosophical connections that we can make.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to connect it also to this philosophical, spiritual side of things. Um, as you said, I'm a sleep researcher, but that's not my main background. I actually did mathematics
Ah,
at the ETH of Zurich. Then I did a PhD in statistics. So my background is more this data analysis
ah,
side of things. And but I was always fascinated by dreaming and sleep and consciousness. So it was for me also kind of natural to go to sleep research. And that's where I am since a few years as a postdoc researcher. And currently I'm trying also to develop my own independent research there, yeah, in this direction of dreaming consciousness.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So I saw several of your articles or co-authored articles. There are also some articles of you I saw,
Mhm.
and that you published in peer-reviewed journals, and so there is already some research that you have done. Can you perhaps talk
Yes,
about
yes.
that? What you are?
Um, so it's a bit diverse, kind of what I did until now, but the professor I'm currently working for, he's a pharmacologist. So he gives a lot of substances, pharmacological agents during sleep to change sleep, to modify it in some
Mm.
sense, some way. So he's not particularly in a first step interested in developing sleeping aids or so, but he's more interested in what it does to the system, to the body, and to sleep in general, how it modifies. So we have looked at different substances, including GHB. That's like the substance that is in these, how do you say, blackout drugs, or no, I don't know how it's called in the where people take it and then they're kind of knocked out and people take advantage of them in a party scene. So this is one drug, but since it has such an effect on you, it also affects sleep quite strongly. And there are other drugs that are also kind of repurposed. For example, dexmedetomidine, which is usually used in anesthesia, but my professor is now giving it also in much lower concentrations during sleep because we see there are some changes and
Yeah.
might deepen some stages of sleep. But maybe for a general audience, I could introduce a bit what we observe in sleep
Mhm.
first so that we have a bit
Yeah.
similar understanding. And from there, I can go on deeper into these
Yeah,
studies,
absolutely.
and also on the subjective side at some point, because that's where I'm mostly interested in myself. And so when we fall asleep, our body starts to relax a bit. The heart rate especially will slow down and become more regular, so less irregular. And this happens quite suddenly at when you fall asleep. And on a brain level, what happens there is a bit. So I don't know if the listeners are familiar too much with it, but the neurons,
I'm not familiar
they,
either. So
yeah, I'm also not a super expert
you're
on the
talking to
molecular
no, no, I
like
don't think.
things, but
Yeah, but
exactly.
let's
So
keep it simple. Just
yeah, yeah,
because the technical terms I don't know, and I don't think the few people that are watching here
true.
probably not. But yeah, but it was quite clear so
But it's
far.
like the neurons, they signal each other with electrical signals, right? They flow in the brain, and if enough neurons are activated together, communicate together, then we can pick up this electrical field potential
Yeah,
on the scalp with electrodes. There you can have many electrodes or only a few. And yeah, then we see these changes over time.
so-called
And
EEG.
yes,
Yes,
electroencephalogram, it's
yeah,
called EEG. And this picks up these oscillations of the neurons. And the neurons can
yeah,
fire in short bursts or in slower oscillations. And of course, there will always be some neurons that fire in short frequencies, some in longer at the same time. So it's a huge
yeah,
mix mess
mess. Yeah,
kind of, and we try to pick it up on the surface. So even though it's generated a bit deeper,
yeah,
but we mainly pick up also the surface, the cortex, it's called. The
yeah.
surface of the brain mainly, and the most deepest parts of the brain we cannot even measure in this way. But the great thing about the EEG is that it's from a temporal standpoint. On time, we can pick up milliseconds. So it's really nice
Mm.
to have this resolution.
With high
We lose.
time series in high resolution. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. And
That's interesting. Yeah.
that's the main kind of tool one uses in sleep research
But
to,
I know that you can distinguish between alpha, beta, gamma, delta, whatever
yes,
kind
yes,
of signals. Can you tell
yes.
me about that? What does it mean, one kind of signal, and does it distinguish, and what does it mean physiologically and also psychologically for
Yes. So there's a bit, we see that, but what it actually means is sometimes very
Mm,
difficult to infer. But maybe what we can see is there are different frequencies, the slowest ones, the delta, and it gets faster and faster and faster. For example, beta power is very fast, oscillations like 30 hertz,
mm,
30,
mhm.
30 oscillations per
Oscillations per
second.
second, yeah.
Exactly. And so there's a whole range. And for example, in wakefulness, these higher frequencies, 30, also 10 hertz, they are more active a little bit. And when you fall asleep, there's a little bit of slowing. So
Yeah,
more of these slower oscillations. So it's kind of the balance
it's
shifts.
it's
Yeah.
to expect. That's what I would have expected. Yeah, when we sleep,
Yeah.
things will go slower. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, somehow that's true. And intuitively, kind of when
intuitively.
you start to fall asleep, the EEG slows down. You see it in the time series as well. It's not as fast anymore, and
Yeah,
it's on a lot of levels. So even the most high frequencies that we cannot even see very well in the time signal, also they are reduced. And so there's this slowing, going on. And when you wake up in this phase, in this sleep onset phase, you usually have static images, hypnagogic state, it's called. You have some impressions or some visions or some just, but not much movement, not much going on, just very static. And then when you start to fall deeper and deeper asleep, then some of these very slow oscillations start to appear. It's 1 hertz or so, so
Okay.
1 per second.
From 30
And
to
this is
1.
like a lot of neurons fired together and then they're inactive together. It's kind of like a
Waves.
very coordinate. Yeah, this comes later as well. Like so at first it's only an isolated oscillation. Boom. And it can also appear that there's a faster oscillation, like 12 hertz or so, which is called a spindle. They also occur quite similar to this, what's called K-complex, this slow oscillation. And these two aspects, they're somehow related to memory processes, or a lot of memory processes have been associated with the occurrence of these two signatures in the signal. But how it works, I'm also no memory expert in this regard. But there's the idea that that sleep consolidates the memory somehow,
Yeah.
puts it more in a long-term form and kind of storage. But there's also, I think, considerable discussions in this direction.
Yeah,
But yeah.
That's precisely the thing that is surprising and fascinating at the same time. That, as far as I had understanding from what I have read, we have learned a lot of things about sleep, but still there is this question: what is it really useful for?
Exactly.
And and the fact is that it is common, I think, in all living beings, down even, I have read some research that even single cells and bacteria have also, well, we can, I don't know if we can speak about this, label it sleep, but what we can see that there are periods of activity and then of
Exactly.
rest, activity and rest. And that could be interpreted as a kind of sleep. And
Exactly.
it's
Even in plants,
yeah,
the
also,
branches go down during the night and then they're
yeah,
more up again. Yeah, it's really.
yeah. I have even done this. You can do this with a webcam. And did you ever do this with you can program. There are some apps and programs that you can take one snapshot at a minute, for example, and then make a sequence. I did that, and in fact, you can see. But that's the conditioning of the light, I think. When there's light, it goes up. When it's darkness during the night, the plant flaps down. Yeah, so it's leaves.
True.
But yeah, but generally we can say that the sleeping, these cycles, yeah, of activity and inactivity are everywhere in every living being.
Mhm.
And we still don't know really what's the function of sleep. There are some things that we can say, yeah, memory consolidation, and I
Yes.
don't know, something in the brain that must be fixed, and so on. You
So
can
there
actually talk about that, yeah.
yeah, there are different theories also. Like I mean, if you start to fall deeper asleep, then you enter this slow oscillations. These start to dominate. It's not going to be isolated anymore, these slow oscillations. That's what's called deep sleep, usually, and non-REM sleep, stage 3. And here, a lot of people also think this is kind of a restorative sleep, because it happens very early on in sleep. And what we know is also if you don't sleep, then there are also health consequences.
Yeah.
And that's quite obvious that yeah, like we said, memory, you cannot memorize stuff as well if you don't sleep, or you become a bit more easily agitated.
It's a common experience, I think. Yeah.
Kind of a lot of things have been observed about the health benefits of sleep. Also, like the immune system gets kind of rejuvenated. There's also this idea or hypothesis that toxins or toxical like side products of the brain, they get kind of flushed out also in this oscillatory pattern during non-REM stage 3, this deep sleep. And but yeah, what it actually is doing, it's not super clear from this biological standpoint. It certainly has important parts to play in health, but yeah, it's still debated, I think, quite a lot.
Yeah, but question is, why all these functions that you mentioned now, why can't they be done also in a waking state? I mean, think of a machine, for example. If we take the materialistic standpoint, yeah, and where we say, well, after all, we are only complicated biological machines, yeah. Well, a machine does not need to sleep, yeah. My car does not sleep. A computer also does not need to sleep, and also a complex artificial intelligence software computer device also does not need to sleep. And why, for example, this flushing of toxins, for example, and so on, why can't this be done also in a waking state? So there is still an explanatory gap, so-called.
I think so too, yeah. Why is this kind of what people call often sensory disconnection? Also this inactivity where your consciousness is also not accessing too much the outside world. Recently, people find that there's still very often some type of connection still there. So it's not complete, and there are still windows of somehow the brain still scans for some activity, threats, maybe from an evolutionary standpoint. I don't know.
May I ask you a personal question now? Because you said you are just you are a father, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How old are you?
A 3-year-old daughter. I have. Yeah.
So, well, I don't have children, but I know we know, yeah, that when you sleep, the parents in a sleeping state are very alert, nevertheless, to the baby when it's crying, yeah? So we know that at some subconscious or subliminal level, we are still alert to what is happening in the outside world. And if our brain doesn't consider it important, we continue to sleep.
Exactly.
But there's something. So yeah, that is fascinating. What is that? Yeah?
This aspect of the crying baby, I think they have tested this in the past. And if it's not your baby that is crying, then you won't wake up. And if it's your baby, then you will wake up. So
interesting.
There is some amount of distinguishing going on of the input as well. If you should wake up or not. Yeah. And there's a very interesting study also by Björn Rasch here in Switzerland, where they also gave relaxing words, for example, to participants during sleep, like rest, relax. And if you do that, participants also in this deep slow wave sleep, this extends, this goes on for longer periods of time, and this is less fragmented. Yeah. So it's really interesting to have that. Also like noise, it's very thought to, if you have random noise, kind of, it has a negative effect of this slow wave as well. Like, for example, these slow oscillations, they're usually observed in a certain part first of the brain, and then they travel. They are spread. So this on and off firing, it spreads throughout the cortex and in different ways. But if you, for example, have this random noise, this traveling goes less far. It's It also, you are more brought out of this slow wave sleep. So you transition to another sleep stage much more often. So really what happens in your environment plays still a kind of a role. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah, but this shows also, I would say, that the idea that when we sleep, we become unconscious, yeah,
Mhm.
so-called
Mhm.
unconsciousness, it's very questionable because
True.
it is another kind of consciousness, but we are not really unconscious in a
Exactly.
sleeping.
It's really also a kind of an interest of mine, because like there's this last sleep stage that is very well known also in popular media. It's called REM sleep,
Yeah,
rapid
REM.
eye movement sleep. So your eyes will start to move fast quite, but your muscles are very relaxed, very low tone, muscle tone, and but your brain will also activate again a bit more. So it will not show these slow oscillations. It will be a little bit more like wakefulness. And when people woke participants up from that stage in the 50s mainly, but it goes back to the 1930s, um, people report a lot of experiences, dreams kind of. So people thought for a long time, REM sleep is dream sleep. That's the
Mhm.
same.
But
It's only part where you're conscious in sleep
yeah,
and the rest is unconscious. But it turned out that this is not true later on, that even when you're awakened from non-REM sleep, even the slow oscillations, right? This global slow oscillations that happen, even if you're awakened there, you report some felt experience, some very often, like currently the average of the studies is 60%, and in REM sleep 80% of the awakenings lead to some report of an experience. But here the question will be, how do these reports get collected? Because for
mm,
example, why did they in the 50s only find experiences in REM sleep?
mm,
Was because they asked the question, what did you dream? So,
mm.
and in REM sleep, the experiences are just more visual, more story-like, more involved, more
Ah,
dynamic,
okay.
emotional, also very emotional. Um, whereas the non-REM dreams, or if we can call them dreams, it's also a terminology. Maybe that's a bit the problem. But non-REM experiences, they are less emotional. They're more like uh, at least what has been observed until now, like thought-like, they call them
What?
um, thought-like ideas,
Okay, I thought,
um,
okay.
having yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
without imagery.
yes, maybe yeah.
Yeah,
Without
the
imagery,
thought,
let's yeah,
concepts, ideas, uh,
yeah,
states, emotional states, perhaps, but without necessarily having an imagery. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Without, but also the emotional tone can be a bit more neutral as well,
Mm,
not as strong anger or so, a
yeah.
bit more relaxed. But the thing is, the question they replaced the awakening studies with, from what did you dream? They went in the 60s by Fulkus, a very important paper. They went to what went through your mind. And
Mm,
to me, mind is, and you have also written on this really
mm,
nicely, it's still suggestive of thinking, of
yeah.
reasoning. So I still believe that a lot of experiences are not captured by this question. Because there was one paper by researchers who I work with from the University of Oslo. They had one of those awakening studies, and they had around 90% of the awakenings from non-REM sleep, even from non-REM free, from these slow oscillations, they led to some type of experience report. A lot of the experiences are also like, I just had some experience, but I
Yeah.
don't know it anymore. It's like
Yeah.
you
It's
lose the memory, it goes away very
exactly.
quickly. So that's why also people do these awakening studies, to be very near to the experience,
Mm.
but it's very quickly lost. And but still we can infer, there was some type of experience there, but they don't recall. So 90%, even in some studies, they go as up as 90%
Yeah.
from any sleep stage. And I think even the 10% that we cannot infer that this is
Yeah.
pure unconsciousness or outside of consciousness, because there can still be the memory
Yeah.
effect, or people not recognizing a state of consciousness as a state of consciousness, like a felt sense, because it's not as maybe impressive or flashy as a REM dream, for example. So I think we miss still, and we then infer something. These studies are very often used to distinguish consciousness from unconsciousness,
Yeah.
and then to say something about this, but it could just be saying something about memory, for example, or
Exactly.
about
Yeah. Yeah. That's also what
it's
I always point out. Yeah. We cannot say that we are unconscious, not only during sleep, but also perhaps during anesthesia, for example,
exactly,
or people who are in coma, or things
yeah,
like that. Uh, because it's a common experience after all, no? When we wake up, we usually, yeah, have a vague remembrance. We know we have dreamt something, but we don't remember anymore. And I can see this also extremely quickly. Before falling asleep,
yeah,
there is a moment, an in-between state, yeah, where I have dreams, but I'm still mostly awake. Then I
mhm,
return for a moment back in my awake, my mind. Let's say so. My mind returns back in the waking state,
yes,
and I remember, oh, I was just dreaming few seconds ago. Only a few seconds, a whole dream, but I don't remember what exactly. I have only very vague, and this only in the time lapse of few seconds, because I fall asleep a little bit, and then
exactly,
and in that moment, I
yeah,
had already some dreams, but yeah, they are already almost washed out from my memory, which shows me that when I don't remember, when I wake up and I don't remember anything, it doesn't mean that I wasn't unconscious. It means that I simply don't remember. Yeah, and that's something that we
exactly,
always also very skilled scientists and researchers, I think, undervaluate. They don't take this into account, and then on that they construe a complicated theory, a castle
mm,
of theoretical speculations. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
That's
So
true.
things are more complicated, right? Yeah, yeah,
Exactly, and especially this subjective side is people don't pay too much attention to this. They give some question and then
yeah,
that's it. But for example, also this paper that found 90% of experiences, right, in non-REM free, what was previously thought to be kind of a type of unconscious state. I think what they also did is instruct people beforehand. So they need to get familiar.
yeah.
What can we actually experience, or what should I report, instead of most studies who just give the question to people, yeah, who are naive, also to look at their own inner experiences, their own inner self. So I feel like to advance really in this dream research, we also really need to be looking at which people do we actually investigate, which do we, yeah, do we train them to look at their own experiences or not, and so on. Yeah, these
And as you say, also
phenomenological, yeah, type of,
the kind of questions that we ask,
yeah, yeah,
determine also the kind of answer that we
yeah, exactly. For
give.
example, this 90% study, this asked, even it in general, it used this what went through your mind question, which is still in use. since the 60s. But what they asked the participants during the wake-up phase was actually a short question. What did you experience? They asked it a bit more maybe neutral. Yeah, general. And I think this also influenced why they got so high experience reports.
Absolutely. So it's fascinating because after all, this only confuses us even more when it comes to the question of what the nature of sleep is. Yeah, it adds another layer of understanding, but also mystery, because we understand now that probably we are not completely unconscious, yet where are we then? What are we doing? What does it really mean after all? Here, of course, it depends. I think also it depends. So here we come perhaps a bit more to the philosophical aspect of the thing. It depends also from the kind of worldview that we have. Now, if one is a materialist and physicalist, and they will interpret certain data in a certain way, and if one is not that kind of naturalist and is open to ideas that are more of how can I put it, for metaphysical, have a more metaphysical inclination, they would give probably other interpretations. Yeah, and maybe you have already read this a bit. My interpretation is it's based only on a first-person experience. It's just very subjective. I don't claim to be this a scientific truth, and I cannot give you scientific data, empirical data to confirm this. But my impression is that when we talk about dreams and these experiences in these states are not really, they are just translations of experiences at another level. For example, when I feel a sense of cold, I'm in my room, I'm sleeping, and the temperature in the room, yeah, so we are talking about something very physical, very concrete, yeah. The temperature in the room is low, my body feels coldness, then I dream of being in a place where there's a lot of snow and ice. Yeah, this is something I just talking about personal direct experience. Or when I'm thirsty, I dream to be in a desert or things like that. Yeah. So this shows me that we are what these dreams are just interpretation, projections, abstract reconstructions of the mind of, well, in this case, bodily sensations, but not necessarily. It can be also something of our inner domain, of our emotional or whatever kind of domain. And they are just these symbolic. They're symbolic representations. So I'm not saying anything new. I think since the ancient Greece, and then also Freud and the modern psychology has taken this up. But they are symbolic representations. So, but this doesn't mean that they are a chaotic mess and they have no truth. But they are the symbolic representation of real experiences, of real how can we say, traveling on our other domains of consciousness and existence or whatever. And changing the perspective from a purely physiological standpoint to a, in this case, it's more psychological, but it can also be more of a metaphysical standpoint. Doesn't mean necessarily that that this, for example, this theory of mine is necessarily true, but it can give us a hint where to look, and see where it leads us. Yeah? That's what I'm always saying. I'm not saying that we should take these metaphysical theories necessarily as a given truth, but let's assume them as a working hypothesis, as a speculation, and see where, and base also a very concrete research on these ideas and see where this leads us.
Really, so this brings a lot of, for me, a lot ideas up.
Yeah, okay.
So it's really, so first of all, some sleep research or some researchers in consciousness, they actually defined consciousness as that vanishes during sleep, for example, or during anesthesia. So you're kind of already you're kind of, how to say, you're molding the what you can observe. So you filter already. You're putting an assumption already into the definition. So that's what you're going to find. You're not going to find consciousness then during that state, for example. And so it really, one's worldview or metaphysical idea has an influence also on research. It's not completely cut off. What you find, what you're going to look at, what your hypotheses are going to be, these are influenced also by that. And exactly what you also described, for example, this interesting idea of a translation, kind of a symbol. When I go to my own experiences during sleep or the wake up phase, I sometimes feel like it's also kind of, I put the words to an experience. I kind of interpret it. It's also feels a little bit, it's very fast, but it's right, like when I wake up, it's kind of, I put some
labels and interpretations.
Yeah, kind of on it. So it could really be a kind of an experience that is there as a raw thing. But then I kind of translate it also into my own language or way of understanding while waking up. And then that's what I say, I experienced this dream, these symbols. But like you say, they may stand for something, for a direct experience.
Yeah.
Just that we are also not always very familiar with certain types of experiences. For example, I just today, while research or while preparing for this meeting, I, out of curiosity, looked at Reddit. If some people have described certain, for example, lucid states during non-REM sleep. So that's another whole area, lucid dreaming, right?
Lucid dreaming.
Which we can also go into a lot. It's like when while you dream, you become aware that you are dreaming. And you can also very often control the dream in a certain way, change it a bit. So you're becoming more of an active participant. Yeah, with awareness of the fact that one is dreaming. And this is usually happening in REM sleep. People have observed this mainly in REM sleep, but even researchers have observed it in non-REM sleep, non-REM 2 stage, where these isolated K complexes are. So, but it was very interesting to observe what people have experienced. And one person said he thinks when he has a lucid non-REM sleep, he has a sense of blissfulness, just a sense of calm bliss. And this is something that really has not been the focus of dream research, but these experiences can happen, and we should open up to a fuller range of experiences.
Yeah, lucid dreaming is certainly a fascinating chapter, and I think this is a much more common experience than usually assumed. Yeah? And this makes me also, here comes to my mind also the research. I don't remember now his name. About a decade ago, he also became very famous for this research. I don't remember, but there was
Stephen LaBerge, or no? So it was lucid dreaming.
A British researcher who made a research on people in a state of vegetative coma. Vegetative coma is not complete coma, that people that are in a coma state, but they have eyes open, and they move their eyes and so, but they don't speak. They don't seem to be, at least from the third person perspective, they don't seem to be absolutely not conscious of anything, even though they have the eyes open and so. And there was this researcher who put one of these people on their brain scan and asked them questions, yeah? And told them, imagine to play tennis or things like that, yeah?
Yeah.
And he could also get answers, yeah? And he could show that the brain scan of this person in this vegetative coma, when he told her, this was a woman, told her that she should imagine to play tennis, was substantially the same brain scan of people in a normal waking state, imagining the same thing, which shows us that probably also these people are conscious of the environment. They cannot communicate it. Yeah. So we must be very, very, very careful in jumping to conclusions. Yeah. And I know that there are a lot of researchers and philosophers of mind that they say, well, since in the state of anesthesia, which is okay, anesthesia is again another kind of physiological state. I think this is a final state, just before death, yeah, the cerebral death. Since there is no consciousness, then this and this and this follows, yeah. But this premise, I don't know, maybe you're right, maybe you are not. We don't know. You cannot
Exactly.
just
It's one shouldn't assume at the get-go
yeah.
this, and especially these types of studies that you indicate with what's called covert consciousness, I think, as well, or people called it that, where you show actual brain signatures that you are aware of something, or the instruction. You can even follow an instruction given to you. This is very interesting. And there was even a case I recently heard by Dr. Michael Nahm discusses it, also from Germany, but it has been published in some paper. I don't know exactly the paper, but a person was also in a coma, and they also did this brain scan, and it showed no sign of activity, no instruction following. But when the person came out of the coma, he could describe everything. So it's not even maybe even required that this signature is there. So it goes even deeper. Why did this person now was able to report all of what's going on, even the instructions that were given during this scan? And yeah, it was a really impressive case. And it questions kind of certain assumptions about what the brain is doing, or what the purpose of the brain is, and the role it plays.
Yeah, this is also fascinating, yeah, that some people remember, yeah, and some others don't remember nothing. So
yeah, exactly.
What determines the difference? Why do some people remember? And I mean, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I remember a lot of dreams. Sometimes I wake up, I don't remember absolutely nothing. And what determines what? What is? And sometimes I have nice dreams, and sometimes I have horror dreams, nightmares, or whatever. What is a nightmare? What distinguishes a nightmare from what it is not? Yeah, I believe that it means that there are a lot of levels of consciousness that we have inside of us. The subconscious, the conscious, so-called conscious, and the superconscious. And yeah, and when we dream, when we are traveling, yeah, when we are traveling in these higher domains, we have nice dreams. When we are traveling in this so-called, let's label them lower. I don't know what means higher or lower, whatever. But in these lower domains where we have nightmares, we are more traveling in this subconscious world where everything is instinctive, but not very rational, yeah.
Mhm.
So to put it, yeah.
Exactly. It's yeah, I think this too, like in dream research, we just put a label on dreams.
Yeah,
Dreams,
it's very general, yeah.
yes, and very often it has character as illusionary, as kind of bizarre, and I believe those dreams also exist, like these bizarre jumbles of impressions throughout the day. But there are also other types of dreams that are feeling more meaningful, especially if one looks at one's own dreams, like where they give, like you say, a sense of joy or calm when you wake up. So the type of dream also influences your state in the morning, I feel like
Yeah, oh, the whole
what
day.
is going through that night, even if you are not aware of it in the morning, I think
Oh, yeah.
influences how you feel when you wake up. And yeah.
You see, we are just already taking the first person perspective now here. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But it can be very useful also to
No,
make
really, yeah.
third person perspective empirical research to start from the first person perspective and see, okay, I had this experience. Maybe it might mean this, this, and that. Okay, let's see and make research on this line. This can be helpful because it's also my experience that sometimes I wake up, yeah, and well, I'm a good mood or bad mood, yeah, and I
Mhm,
don't know why,
mhm,
yeah. But now I know why, because sometimes I wake up and remember the dream that I had, and this dream determines my mood in the waking state when I wake up, yeah.
yeah.
And therefore it's easy to conclude, yeah, when you have your good mood, you had good dreams probably, or your psyche was in that dreaming state or sleeping state, which we label as more positive and more
Mhm.
blissful, yeah? When you are bad mood and you don't know why, but it's why most likely it is because you had just few minutes ago a bad dream, yeah? And you don't know what, yeah? But in the subconscious it remains.
Yeah, and it sometimes even comes back. Like if,
Yeah,
for example, I dreamt something about coffee or whatever, and then I
you're a coffee
somehow
addict
no,
like
no, I'm
me.
not.
I
No,
am. I
I'm not.
am.
So for me, this would be something unusual because I don't usually drink coffee.
Yeah.
I drink green tea or so, yeah,
Oh, I love
more.
coffee. I would drink coffee. Yeah, but that's perhaps also, I don't know if is it true that drinking too much coffee influences dreaming and the sleeping state? Yeah, right.
So that's actually one of my areas of research I did in the past with coffee, but
Mm,
more on the if it is positive or bad for your sleep.
mm,
And because when you give coffee, if you abstain from coffee for a week and then you go to the lab, then you get a huge amount of coffee at
yeah.
once.
Mhm.
And then researchers see, okay, sleep is disturbed. But then if you take it daily and maybe more in the morning, then the body seems to adapt.
Yeah,
And you will have more of these adenosine receptors, what's called, that the body upregulates certain things to balance it out. And so you're probably not having a huge negative effect on sleep anymore. Mm, but I found this that probably sleep might still be a bit reduced, even if you're using it daily, but at the same time, maybe more deep, that the sleep has more of these slow oscillations. So it's a balance, what it means for health. But then on a subjective side, I don't know if it influences your dreams.
but
Other
I once
substances
tried
do.
this.
Other substances do, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
like alcohol or
Okay, without alcohol.
yeah.
Alcohol is an entire chapter per
of
se.
its own. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
but no, I tried for some time, also more than a week, I think several months. Didn't drink coffee at all, and just because I wanted to see if it makes a difference. But as far as I could remember in my state of waking consciousness, didn't make this much of a difference. I think the only important thing is probably that we shouldn't drink coffee before going to sleep. Yeah? We should drink coffee in the morning, yeah? And maybe at noon, but not at least 3, 4, 5 hours, not before going to sleep. So I personally didn't see this much. So I returned to my addiction. I said, okay, it
Yeah,
makes no
no,
difference. I continue to drink my coffee.
people also see some health benefit or associate coffee with some certain health benefits there.
They even say that there are some people who say that coffee is healthy, but maybe this is a coffee lobby. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, assessing causality is always difficult, especially with things one does over a long period of time. You cannot do these randomized
Yeah.
studies, controlled studies as easily as when you give it once or so. But yeah, but anyways, like maybe did you feel a change when you did not drink coffee like
No, not at
then
all.
in this never
Um,
like
Personally, I didn't notice any difference. Yeah.
because what I know, for example, from anecdotes as well and research, is that, for example, cannabis, if people use it a lot, they
Yeah.
seem, I don't know if it suppresses a little bit the REM sleep, or I'm not 100% sure, but if they stop, these visual dreams will come back very
Ah,
strongly.
yeah.
So in this change phase between stopping and there could
Yeah.
be some where the body adopts kind of a new.
Well, cannabis is already, I think, a more heavier, not a heavy drug, but it's
Certainly different than caffeine. I don't want to
yeah,
compare, of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
but just to show that certain substances do
Oh yeah, of course.
influence the dream state. There's also like certain, like the African dream root, it's called, where people in Africa took this root powder and this created more lucid dreams, for example,
Yeah,
or led to more lucid dreaming. So there are certain substances that have some effect on dreaming, but
yeah, for sure.
it's probably not as well studied, I guess, the whole field of how
But
substances or
that's
foods
yeah.
influence dreams.
Yeah, but that substances influence our state of consciousness. Yeah, it's quite obvious. I mean,
Mhm.
take an alcohol drink, drink a whiskey, and you will see that the effects. Yeah? So there's no doubt about that. Yeah, but I usually point out always correlation causation fallacy. Yeah, that we see that there is a correlation. Yeah, that and therefore infer from that a causation. Yeah, the fact that chemicals modify our state of consciousness doesn't imply that chemicals produce consciousness. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. It's like I heard this discussion before. You can think of the brain as a
yeah,
generator of experience, but you can also think of it as a reducer or filter or
yeah.
modifier or whatever. And just by giving a substance, you cannot say it's like this or that. It's
Yeah, this was the original theory of William James and also
exactly,
of Aldous Huxley.
yeah,
Aldous Huxley uh, compared the brain to a reducer or a filter of the mind at large. Yeah? And he saw the brain as a channel where consciousness flows through, like water in a water pipe or electricity in an electric cable, but it is not the water pipe or the electric cable, just to use this metaphor, that produces water now, right? So we
Exactly.
can see it also in this way. Who is right? We don't know. But as scientists, we should be agnostic about these things
I think so too. Yeah.
and test both theories. Yeah,
Yeah, especially for example, like this was also, I think, Aldous Huxley or somebody who gave this metaphor of a radio
radio
receiver.
metaphor. Yeah,
Of course, if I destroy the radio receiver,
yeah,
I
exactly.
cannot produce sounds, but doesn't mean that the radio show is destroyed or the
Yeah,
person who is speaking in the
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's hard because now still our science is still heavily based on this physicalist, materialist point of view. They call themselves naturalists, yeah, because nowadays the word physicalist or materialist has been has gained a negative connotation. So they have morphed the terminology, and I'm a naturalist. It sounds better. And unfortunately, I think so. Well, I don't know how far you can go now openly on that, but there is also academic pressure, I think,
Mhm.
in the academia on keeping it absolutely necessarily naturalist and this naturalist standpoint, because otherwise you don't get funds to make research. Huh?
I think
And
it's just because also this is kind of like the common assumption or the common shared view, and then you kind of have to a little bit put it at least in this framework, I guess, to get the funding and all this. Yeah, it's true. There's some kind of pressure, or there are no funding instruments that, or not as much, or that I don't know too much, that fund a bit more an open view, or also
mm,
science on this more subjective part. Because I think it's really necessary. For example, I couldn't be a dream researcher without looking also at my own dreams, because it kind of informs me also what is possible, maybe to look further, to see if there is an effect, then follow up kind of more rigorously. But it kind of, especially when it comes to consciousness research, it comes, the subject is not something of we can just look with EEG or with
yeah,
from the outside with a scanner. It's something we experience, and so the
yeah,
nature of the subject that we want to research demands kind of this inner view, this
okay,
knowing in oneself what is possible, how it feels like, and to also be more, how do you say, more without jumping to assumptions, because very often when we report an experience, we kind of,
yeah,
it's filtered through our worldview directly. So that's why I also enjoy a little bit this approach. I don't know if you know it a bit, this phenomenological approach,
mm,
where they have this idea of epoche, I think it's called
yeah,
also, where you
ourselves.
suspend judgment. Yeah, exactly, where you don't directly judge how the experience was, or so, where you actually observe how it felt. So this is one helpful view, I think, also to include a bit in science more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we will come to a point where we will see that without including the first person approach, there can't be further progress, or it will be a
Yeah.
slow and painful progress,
Mhm.
cumulative progress. And we are already in a especially in these kind of fields. Uh, but there is still this pressure to eliminate that, and uh, well, it's a while that I'm out of the academic business, but I can remember well when I was a a postdoc, I'm working as a postdoc, every kind of what we presented as a proposal for funding was heavily based on the hype of the moment. Yeah,
Exactly. That's a huge problem. Yeah, because this attracts the funding.
and if you
But
don't
that's
present something that is in line with the mainstream,
yeah,
it's very unlikely that you will get.
and there's of course some way for this to make progress and something, but the real change in science usually happened
Yeah,
not within the main framework. So
yeah,
it was usually these
exactly.
revolutions, basically, in the way of thinking, with Einstein, for example, maybe proposing some very new way of seeing. He was also not in the academic world when he did that, I think, too much. Or there are many examples where discoveries were made not within this main mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially the study of consciousness is essentially in its intrinsic nature something that is subjective. And nowadays we have this tendency to drag it down into a third person domain. Why? Not only by trying to describe it as a contrived neural network phenomenality, yeah. Uh, but also we have come to a point that is paradoxical, because there are now an entire philosophical stream of people that say that there is no consciousness at all, that consciousness is an
Yeah.
illusion.
Mhm.
I think this is we have come to a point, yeah, that is ridiculous in my point
Mhm.
of view, at least.
No, I also don't understand this illusionism,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
at all. Kind of, it's rather the opposite. It's like this fact I'm really sure of. I
yeah,
feel I am in this moment, kind of experiencing.
yeah.
So this moment is the most real to what I know.
And that's
Yeah,
also the point of starting point where I think we must make sleep research. Perhaps it should not be an exclusion, no?
yeah, yeah. It
It
can
the two things should come together, the first
mhm,
person and third person. There should be no antagonism. And
exactly.
my dream is then not only to put them together, but to create something that goes beyond them both. But what that could be, it's probably I don't will not see this in my lifetime, but it
But
could be
yeah.
a name, a goal for the next generations.
And also, since we only in our society focus on this third person perspective, on this behavioralism, this outside view of things, physical processes describing them, we are also only thinking of interventions in that realm. Usually, we
Yeah,
think of a substance, we think of some brain stimulation, we think of changes in behavior, but we never look at the inner
yeah,
world and how this might be an access point to also open up sleep or to change your consciousness during sleep, maybe, or to, yeah, and what effects this could have or what we can do there in this realm. It's really puts a one-sided lens, I guess, to things.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, interesting, interesting discussion.
uh,
So, Benjamin, or Benjamin, in English it's Benjamin, right? Yes.
yes, but however,
Yeah,
you want to call me.
I think we eventually we can also make a second round if you're interested
Mhm.
to and see and
Certainly,
focus perhaps
there's
on some aspects, sleep research or the philosophical aspects that surround it, because we can, perhaps we are in a position we two, we both, where we can put these things together. This third and this subjective and so-called objective. By the way, it would be an interesting subject also to see what does it mean that something is objective, yeah? Because I could contend, for example, that everything that is objective at the end is always an experience in some form. But well, for the time being, let's keep it simple and say
exactly
the difference between the subjective and objective domains and this level of reality that we perceive and how we perceive it from a more philosophical point of view, and to complement it eventually with your and my experience as scientists, and from the third person perspective and the empirical data. And maybe you are more in line, you know more about the sleeping research, sleep research. I'm more the astrophysical, more on the macro. You're more on the meso scale.
Yeah,
Someone
exactly.
else could be on the micro scale. So this is also an interesting micro, meso, and meso scale and macro scale. There are three aspects that are not mutually exclusive now, because nowadays there's this opposite tendency. We should be holistic, and we should see things from the not from the top, from the bottom up, but from the top down. Yeah, but I say, why don't we see them both?
Exactly.
And that's the difficulty.
These are like
to put
two
them,
perspectives we can take. Yeah, and
that's this multi-perspectival.
Yeah, you had a recent nice article on this.
Yeah, on Substack, my Substack.
Exactly, that
Letters for Post-Material Future for the listening.
Yeah, that we can hold different views at the same time without conflict. That they don't necessarily need to exclude each other. We don't need to focus only on this or only on that. And I think really, this subjective side is very important, for the whole field. Shouldn't be excluded and can be combined, like you say, also with these awakening studies. I feel like they are a first step in this direction, but they don't focus too much on the subjective side. So it's still a bit neglected. Especially what I also found is that how you wake up a person matters. If you wake them up with an alarm, you get less dream recall than when I call a participant by name. So this is an association I found kind of in the studies that were already done in the past. So I feel like we should make also a very great environment for reporting subjective reports, and kind of all this needs to be considered. It cannot be neglected.
Yeah, it comes to my mind other two subjects related to these things, and sleepwalking. What kind of state of consciousness is sleepwalking? I don't,
it's a good question. I mean, no, go on.
Go ahead.
No, Francesca Siglari, a researcher from Amsterdam, she is looking a little bit at that, and people seem to, it's kind of like a dreaming state, but they also incorporate what they see, and so there's somehow but this inhibition is.
They must see something, because otherwise they would hit a wall.
Yeah, exactly. They perceive something of the environment. But it's incorporated somehow in a more dream type of world.
I don't know. I don't think I was ever sleepwalking, but my brother, when he was a little child, he was more or less every evening you saw him walk around our apartment. But it's really interesting, because the question is, what is that? What kind of consciousness is that? What does it mean? Why does nature, also an interesting question, why does nature come up with this kind of behavior? So here again, is this evolutionary perspective, this strictly Darwinian evolutionary perspective, can it tell us anything about that? Because what kind of evolutionary advantage could that have that you sleepwalk? Yeah, you might be you are in a state of alert against enemies or whatever, but I don't think that that's the whole story. Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
complicated than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we lay down for 8 hours?
Yeah.
Being also vulnerable from this evolutionary perspective, or this,
It would be
yeah,
something sleep should not exist, or at least not be so widespread
yeah.
in every species in
I
every
mean,
living form. Yeah.
because in, for example, dolphins,
Mm,
they can, or certain types of birds or so, they can have this slow wave sleep
mm,
only in one brain hemisphere, and then at the other time at the other one, and the other is still a bit active and still. So this happens in certain species, but why is the human kind of has this global sleep as well, like this
yeah.
global brain sleep? That's a good question, and I think like I would be happy to take up a
Yeah.
lot of questions because I feel like there's so much more we can
Yeah.
also discuss on these issues and questions and go deeper also from a felt perspective. There are so many interesting things that happen during sleep that we could also discuss in further
Yeah. Yeah.
meetings.
Let's
Yeah,
organize a second meeting. Yeah, because I think it is very fascinating, and you are certainly in this subject and can tell us a lot more than what I can say, at least.
no, but
And
it's
as
really
far as
nice
I
to
can
have your
see,
view as well to
uh,
kind of
yeah, we have very
to put it in
complementary
a
views.
perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
but we are, I think, both open also to this first person perspective, so
Certainly,
can
we
be
share
useful.
that a lot.
Okay, Benjamin,
Nice.
thank you very much for this interesting conversation, and let's see us again. Yeah,
Thank you for having me,
thank you.
Marco.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.